The morning sun of Kepler Prime cast long shadows across the crystal towers of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute. Students from dozens of worlds hurried along the floating walkways, their bags heavy with data tablets and study materials. Today was special. Today, Class 10 would begin their study of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. Marcus Chen walked slowly among the rushing crowds. He was different from the others, though most people would not notice at first. While other students wore expensive biosuits that glowed or changed colors, Marcus wore simple brown pants and a plain white shirt. His hair was dark brown, cut short and neat. His skin was a light tan color. He looked ordinary in every way. Around him, the other students showed off their natural abilities. The Vorthan nobles had tall, thin bodies made of what looked like living metal. Their faces never showed emotion, and their eyes glowed with soft blue light. They remembered everything they ever saw or heard. A group of them stood near the entrance, sharing memories by touching their metallic fingers together. The Etherians floated just above the ground, their see-through bodies shimmering like water in sunlight. They were empaths who could feel the emotions of others. One of them, a female with long silver hair, noticed Marcus watching and smiled. Her body glowed brighter for a moment. Marcus smiled back and nodded politely. The Etherians moved in perfect. Groups of 5. They were a hive mind species, meaning they all shared the same thoughts. When one spoke, they all spoke at the same time, creating a strange harmony. Their skin was gray and smooth, and they had large black eyes. They never argued because they always agreed with each other. The Nexari were the most interesting to watch. They were shapeshifters who could change their bodies into almost any form. As Marcus watched, one changed from looking like a tall blue humanoid to a shorter green creature with 4 arms. Another tried to copy the appearance of a Vorthan, but could not get the metallic shine quite right. Marcus reached the entrance to Building 7, where Class 10 met. The building was made of the same crystal material as the others, but it felt different somehow, more serious. The sign by the door read Advanced Xenobiology, Dangerous Species Studies. Below that, in smaller letters, it said Authorized Personnel Only. Inside the classroom was designed like a small theater. The seats went up in rows, all facing a large circular stage in the center. Above the stage, holographic projectors waited to show 3-dimensional images. The walls were lined with specimen cases, each one empty, but ready to hold whatever dangerous creatures they would study. Marcus chose a seat in the middle row, not too close to the front and not in the back. He opened his simple notebook and took out a basic writing pen. Around him, other students activated expensive recording devices and pulled out advanced data tablets. A Vorthan named Calyx 9 sat to his left. The metallic being turned his glowing eyes toward Marcus. "Human," he said in a voice like metal scraping metal. "Your species is not in our main databases." "What world do you come from?" "Earth," Marcus said simply. "We call it Sol 3 in the official papers." Calyx 9's eyes flickered. As he searched his memory banks, no record found. This must be a recently contacted world. "Something like that," Marcus agreed. On his right, the Etherian he had seen outside floated down into the seat next to him. Up close, he could see that her translucent skin had tiny sparkles in it, like stars. "I am Lirale," she said, her voice soft and musical. "I sense you are calm." Most students feel nervous on the first day of Class 10. Marcus looked around the room. Now that she mentioned it, he could see the signs. The Nexari were shifting shapes more quickly than normal, a sign of stress. The Catharians were humming in a low tone, which meant they were worried. Even the usually emotionless Vorthans seemed to be processing information faster than usual. "I guess I am calm," Marcus said. "I have been looking forward to this class." For a long time, Lirale tilted her head, studying him with large silver eyes. Most beings fear what they will learn here. These are the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. Before Marcus could answer, the lights dimmed. Door. At the back of the stage slid open, and Professor Zexai entered. The Altarian was impressive even by galactic standards. His body was tall and thin, covered in crystalline skin that shifted through different colors. Right now, his skin showed a deep blue, which meant he was focused and ready to teach. Professor Zexai had 4 arms and a face that was almost human, except for the crystal formations where eyebrows should be. He wore long robes that seemed to float around him as he moved. In the galaxy of learning, he was a legend. His studies of dangerous species had saved countless lives and prevented several wars. "Welcome, students," Professor Zexai said, his voice carrying easily through the room without any artificial help. "You have been chosen for Class 10 because you represent the best minds your species have to offer. What you will learn here is not just academic knowledge. It is survival information that could save entire worlds." The professor's skin shifted to a warning orange color. "But first, you must understand what you are getting into. The creatures we will study in this class have killed millions of beings. They have destroyed colonies, defeated armies, and ended civilizations. Some are still active threats. Others are contained only through great effort and cost." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his pen ready above his notebook. Round him, he could hear some students breathing faster. A few Nexari had unconsciously shifted into more defensive forms. "Over the next several months," Professor Zexai continued, "you will learn about beings so dangerous that most galactic citizens are not allowed to know they exist. You will study their hunting methods, their reproduction cycles, their intelligence levels, and most importantly, how to survive if you ever encounter them." The professor paused and looked around the room, his crystal eyes meeting each student's gaze. When he looked at Marcus, the human met his stare calmly and even nodded slightly. "Your final project will be to choose one species we have studied and create a complete survival guide. This guide could someday be used by real colonists, explorers, or military personnel. The quality of your work could mean the difference between life and death for real people." Professor Zexai walked to the center of the stage. "Are there any questions before we begin?" A Catharian collective raised all 5 of their hands and spoke in harmony. "Professor, how many students have left this class before completing it?" The professor's skin turned a sad purple color. "Approximately 30%. Some because they cannot handle the material. Others because their governments recall them, deciding the knowledge is too dangerous for their species to possess." Marcus raised his hand. Professor Zexai nodded. At him, "What about the students who do finish?" Marcus asked. "What do they usually do afterward?" "An excellent question," the professor said, his skin brightening to unpleased green. "Most become advisors to their governments on dangerous species. Some join galactic survey teams. A few become researchers themselves, adding to our knowledge of these creatures." Marcus nodded and made a note in his book. "Any other questions?" Professor Zexai asked. When no one else spoke, he smiled. "Then let us begin. Computer, display the course schedule." Above the stage, a holographic list appeared. Marcus read through it quietly, his expression calm and interested. Next to him, Lirelei was glowing more brightly, a sign that she was feeling strong emotions from the other students. Excitement, curiosity, and worry filled the room, like a thick fog, but from the human beside her, she felt something else entirely. Something that made her uncomfortable, though she could not quite understand why. For Marcus Chen, she sensed not fear or excitement, but something much more complex. Recognition, as if he already knew what they were going to study, as if he had seen these dangerous creatures before. Professor Zexai began to speak about their first subject, and Marcus Chen opened his notebook to a fresh page, ready to learn about the galaxy's monsters. The first creature appeared in the holographic display like a nightmare made real. It was completely black, shaped like a wolf, but twice the size. Its body seemed to be made of living shadow that moved and shifted even when the creature stood. Still, where its eyes should be, there were only 2 points of red light that seemed to look directly at each student. "The Shadow Maw of Tenebris 7, Professor Zexai announced. Its crystal skin had turned a professional gray color. One of the most feared predators in the Outer Rim territories. Several students made sounds of fear. A Nexari in the front row quickly shifted into a smaller, more compact form. The Etherian next to Marcus Lirelei was glowing so brightly that Marcus had to squint. "The Shadow Maw does not hunt like normal predators," the professor continued. "It does not track by sight or smell. Instead, It feeds on fear itself. The more afraid its prey becomes, the stronger the shadow maw grows. Marcus leaned forward and wrote in his notebook, "Feeds on fear, emotional energy source." He underlined the question twice. The hologram showed the creature moving through what looked like a dark forest. Trees bent away from it as it passed. Small animals ran in terror, but they could not escape. The shadow maw simply stepped through solid tree trunks, as if they were made of air. "Notice how it phases through matter," Professor Zexai said. "The shadow maw can become solid when it wants to attack, but most of the time it exists between the physical and energy planes. Traditional weapons pass right through it." A Vorthan student named Hex Prime raised his metallic hand. "What is the statistical probability of surviving an encounter with this creature?" Professor Zexai's skin turned dark red. "Based on recorded encounters, approximately 0.003%. Out of 1,000 documented cases, only 3 beings have survived a shadow maw attack." The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the Catharians, who always made that sound when they were calculating something together. Marcus raised his hand. "Professor, how does it choose its hunting grounds? Does it stay in one area or move around?" "An excellent question," the professor said, his skin brightening slightly. "The shadow maw is a territorial hunter, but its territory can span entire continents. It seems to prefer areas where large populations of intelligent beings live, as they produce more fear." Marcus made another note. "Large populations prefers intelligent prey." Next to that, he wrote pack hunter. "The shadow maw hunts alone," Professor Zexai said, as if reading Marcus's mind. "But there have been reports of multiple creatures working together when facing particularly dangerous prey." The hologram changed to show the inside of what looked like a space station. Emergency lights flashed red and bodies lay scattered in the corridors. The recording was clearly from a security camera. "This is from Research Station Omega-7, the professor said quietly. "The entire crew of 400 beings was killed in less than 6 hours. Watch how the creature adapts its hunting method." On the screen, the shadow maw appeared to be learning. At first, it attacked beings directly. But when some of them fought back with energy weapons, the creature changed its approach. It began stalking them, appearing just long enough to be seen before vanishing again. The fear grew stronger, and the shadow maw grew larger. "Behavioral adaptation," Marcus wrote. "Studies prey responses, uses psychological warfare." Lirelei was now glowing so brightly that other students were moving away from her. The emotions in the room were too much for her empathic abilities to handle. She looked at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. "How can you be so calm?" she whispered. "Can you not see how terrible this creature is?" Marcus looked at her with genuine concern. "Are you okay? You look like you are in pain." "I can feel everyone's fear," she said, her voice shaking. "Everyone except yours." "Why are you not afraid?" Before Marcus could answer, Professor Zexai moved to the next lesson. The hologram changed to show a world that looked like it was made entirely of crystal. Beautiful geometric formations stretched as far as the eye could see, sparkling in the light of twin suns. "The planet Zarian," the professor said, "one of the most beautiful worlds in the galaxy. It's also one of the most deadly." The view zoomed in to show that the crystals were moving. They flowed like water, constantly changing shape and size. As they watched, a small ship landed on the surface. The pilot, who appeared to be a Nexari explorer, stepped out and immediately began studying the crystal formations. "The crystalline swarm," Professor Zexai announced. "They appear to be beautiful mineral formations, but they are actually a collective organism. Watch what happens when organic matter touches them." The Nexari explorer picked up a small piece of crystal to examine it. The moment it touched his skin, the crystal began to spread. Within seconds, his hand was covered in the same sparkling formations. The explorer tried to shake it off, but the crystals continued to grow. "The swarm converts all organic matter into more of itself," the professor explained. "The process is not painful, but it is completely unstoppable once it begins." On the screen, the explorer was now half crystal and half flesh. But the worst part was that he seemed happy about it. He was smiling as the crystals covered his face. The conversion process includes the nervous system, Professor HFY continued. The victim experiences intense pleasure during the transformation. They want it to continue. The Catherian collective made their worried humming sound louder. One of them spoke for all five. How does one escape if the victim does not want to escape? That is the horror of the crystalline swarm, the professor said, as most victims help spread the infection. They bring the crystals to others, believing they are sharing something wonderful. Marcus was writing quickly now. Biological conversion affects nervous system. Victims become willing spreaders. Paused and added, how long does full conversion take? From first contact to complete transformation, approximately 72 hours, Professor HFY answered. After that, the new crystal formation becomes part of the collective consciousness. The recording showed the explorer's ship taking off, but the pilot was no longer the same being who had landed. His body was now a mixture of flesh and living crystal, and he was taking samples of the swarm with him. Infection vector identified, Marcus wrote. Mobile spread through transportation. As the days passed, Professor HFY introduced them to more horrors. The void leviathans that swam through space itself, large enough to swallow entire starships. The mind flensors that could rewrite a person's thoughts and memories. The plague winds that turned entire atmospheres into toxic clouds, with each new creature. Marcus asked the same types of questions. How do they hunt? How do they track prey? How do they adapt when their prey fights back? His classmates began to notice that his questions were always practical, always focused on behavior and tactics. After 2 weeks of classes, Lirelei approached Marcus in the hallway. Her usually bright glow was dim, and she looked tired. Marcus, she said quietly, I need to ask you something. Of course, Marcus said, stopping to face her. What is it? Every day in class, I feel the fear and horror from all our classmates. It is natural. These creatures are designed to terrify us. She paused, studying his face. But from you, I feel something else. Something that confuses me. What do you feel? Marcus asked. Lirelei's glow flickered as she struggled to find the right words. Interest. Professional interest. Like you are. Studying these creatures, not to avoid them, but to understand how they work. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Marcus, what kind of world do you come from that makes you look at galaxy-class predators like they are just interesting puzzles? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but serious. A world where we learn that the most dangerous predator is not always the one that looks scary, Lirelei. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks completely harmless. He smiled at her, the same pleasant smile he always wore. But for the first time since meeting him, Lirelei felt something from the human that made her blood run cold. Recognition, as if he was looking at the galaxies. Monsters and seeing something familiar, something that reminded him of home. 3 weeks into the semester, Lirelei could not sleep. Every night, she lay in her dormitory room, trying to understand what she felt from the human student. The other students were easy to read. Their emotions were clear and normal. Fear during the scary lessons. Relief when class ended. Worry about their grades. But Marcus Chen was different. During the most terrifying lectures, when creatures that could destroy entire planets were displayed in horrific detail, Marcus felt curious. Not the scientific curiosity that other students showed, but something else. Something that made Lirelei's empathic senses send warning signals through her mind. She decided she needed answers. The next morning, Lirelei found Marcus sitting alone in the academy's garden. He was reading a textbook about galactic ecosystems while eating a simple breakfast of bread and fruit. The morning light made his ordinary brown hair shine slightly, and he looked peaceful and harmless. Good morning, Marcus, Lirelei said, settling down on the bench beside him. Her transparent body cast rainbow patterns on the ground as the sunlight passed through her. Morning, Lirelei, Marcus said with his usual pleasant smile. How are you feeling today? You looked tired yesterday and class. Lirelei appreciated that he always asked about her well-being. Marcus was kind and polite to everyone, which made her confusion even worse. How could someone who seemed so caring feel so wrong to her empathic abilities? Marcus, she said carefully, I have been wondering about your home world. You said it was called Earth, and that the official name is Southry. But when I searched the galactic databases, I could not find any information about it. Marcus continued eating his breakfast, but Lirelei noticed his chewing slowed down slightly. What did you find when you searched? Almost nothing, Lirelei said. Just a note that says recently contacted species, limited information available, classification pending. That is very unusual. Most worlds have detailed files by the time their students reach the Institute. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I suppose Earth is still pretty new to galactic society. We have not been in contact very long. How long? Lirelei asked. A few years. Marcus said vaguely. He took another bite of his bread. What else would you like to know? Lirelei felt frustration building inside her. Marcus always answered her questions, but his answers never really told her anything important. What is your world like? What kind of creatures live there? What is the dominant species like? Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking up at the twin suns of Kepler Prime. Earth is mostly harmless, he said finally. We have some predators, but nothing like what we study in class. It's mostly just simple animals. Bears, wolves, big cats. Nothing that could threaten a spacefaring civilization. Something in the way he said mostly harmless made Lirelei's glow flicker. It was the same tone someone might use when telling a lie that was not exactly a lie but was not the whole truth either. What about your species? She pressed. Humans, you called them? We are pretty average, Marcus said. Not as smart as the Vorthans, not as psychically gifted as your people, not as cooperative as the Catherians. We make up for it by being adaptable, I guess. Before Lirelei could ask more questions, other students began arriving in the garden. The conversation turned to homework and upcoming tests, but Lirelei noticed that Marcus seemed relieved when the other students showed up. That afternoon in class, Professor Zexai announced a new topic. Today we will discuss theoretical deathworld characteristics, he said, his crystal skin shifting. To a deep purple, that meant he was about to discuss something very serious. We have studied individual dangerous creatures, the professor continued. But some scholars believe that there could be entire worlds that produce nothing but apex predators. Worlds so hostile that only the most dangerous species could survive. Holographic display showed a planet that looked like a nightmare. Massive storms covered half the surface. Volcanoes erupted constantly. The oceans were filled with creatures fighting each other. Even the plants looked deadly, with thorns and poisonous flowers. A theoretical death world would have several characteristics. Professor Zexai explained. Extreme climate changes that force rapid evolution. Limited resources that create constant competition. Multiple apex predators competing for dominance. Marcus was taking notes, but Lirelei noticed he was nodding slightly, as if he recognized what the professor was describing. The most dangerous aspect of a death world, the professor continued, would be that evolution would not stop with one successful species. The constant pressure would continue to create new threats. Any species that survived would need to be extremely adaptable. Worthon's student raised his hand. Professor, what would happen if such a species ever left their world? Professor Zexai's skin turned a worried orange color. That is a terrifying thought. Species that evolved on a true death world would have survival skills far beyond anything we have studied. They would be able to adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle. Would they be naturally aggressive? Asked a Catherian collective. Not necessarily, the professor said. But they would have learned that sometimes violence is the only solution to survival. They would be practical about it. Efficient. Looked up from his notes. Professor, you mentioned that such a species would need to be adaptable. What other traits would they develop? Professor Zexai considered the question carefully. Excellent question. They would likely develop advanced social cooperation, since working together would be essential for survival. They would be highly intelligent, able to solve complex problems quickly. And most importantly, they would be persistent. On a death world, giving up means death. Marcus wrote something in his notebook and underlined it twice. They would also develop what we might call threat assessment skills, the professor continued. They would be very good at recognizing danger, even when it is disguised as something harmless. Lirelei felt a chill run through her translucent body. She looked at Marcus, who was listening with intense focus. Such a species would be master survivors, Professor Zexai said. They would learn to hide their true capabilities until they needed them. They would appear harmless to potential threats while secretly studying everything around them. The professor paused and looked around the room. The truly frightening thing about deathworld survivors is that they would not just be physically dangerous, they would be psychologically sophisticated. They would understand how other species think, what makes them afraid, what motivates them. Marcus raised his hand again. How would other species recognize a deathworld survivor if they encountered one? They probably would not, Professor Zexai said, his skin turning almost black with worry. That would be the point. A true deathworld. Species would have learned that survival often depends on being underestimated. When class ended, the students filed out quietly. The theoretical discussion had disturbed them more than the real monsters they had studied before. At least with the shadow maws and crystalline swarms, they knew what they were facing. As Lirelei walked beside Marcus toward the dormitories, she finally asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. Marcus, she said quietly, when Professor Zexai was describing the theoretical deathworld species, you seemed very interested, more interested than usual. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. For a moment his pleasant expression was replaced by something more serious, something that made Lirelei's empathic abilities scream warnings at her. Lirelei, Marcus said gently, what do you think would happen if a deathworld species actually existed, and they decided to make contact with galactic civilization? I do not know, Lirelei whispered, her glow dimming with fear. Marcus smiled, and his expression returned to its usual pleasantness.
Ow.
But now Lirelei could see something else behind that smile. Something that had been there all along, but she had not recognized it. I think Marcus said carefully, they would probably send someone to study the galaxy first. To learn about the other species, understand their capabilities, figure out how to approach them safely. He started walking again, leaving Lirelei standing alone in the hallway. After all, Marcus called back over his shoulder, the smart thing to do would be to make sure you understand what you are dealing with before you reveal what you really are. Lirelei stood frozen, finally understanding what her empathic senses had been trying to tell her for weeks. Marcus Chen was not just studying the galaxy's monsters. He was one of them. The final month of the semester arrived with an announcement that made every student nervous. Professor Zexai stood before the class, his crystal skin cycling through colors as he spoke. Your final project will be individual presentations, he said. Each of you will choose one dangerous species we have studied and create a complete analysis. You will present your findings to the class, and your presentation will determine 50% of your final grade. Around the room, students began whispering to each other about which creatures they would choose. The Vorthons immediately started calculating which species would give them the best chance of a high score. The Catherians hummed together as they shared ideas through their hive mind connection. Marcus sat quietly, listening to the discussions around him. When Professor Zexai asked for volunteers to present first, several students raised their hands. Marcus waited until the very end. I would like to present last, if that is acceptable, Marcus said politely. Professor Zexai nodded. Of course, what species will you be analyzing? Marcus smiled his usual pleasant smile. I would like to do a theoretical analysis of an apex deathworld species. Something that might exist but has not been discovered yet. The professor's skin shifted to an interested green. An excellent choice. Very challenging from an academic standpoint. Over the next 3 weeks, the presentations began. Had chosen a different monster from their studies, and each presentation was more terrifying than the last. Calyx 9, the Vorthan student, chose the Mindfluencers. His presentation was filled with mathematical equations and probability calculations. He explained exactly how the creatures rewrote their victims' thoughts and showed statistical models of how quickly they could take over entire populations. His metallic voice never changed tone. Even when describing the most horrible details, Lirelei presented on the void leviathans. Her empathic abilities let her understand the psychological impact these space-dwelling giants had on their victims. She described the terror that Starship crews felt when they saw something the size of a moon swimming toward them through empty space. Her translucent body glowed brighter and dimmer as she spoke, reflecting the emotions of the creature's victims. The Catherian collective chose the crystalline swarm. All 5 of them spoke at once, creating an eerie harmony as they explained how the collective consciousness of the crystals worked. They seemed to understand better than anyone else how a hive mind could be both beautiful and terrifying. A Nexary student named Flux presented on the shadow moths. They kept changing shape during the presentation, trying to demonstrate how the creatures could phase between solid and energy states, but every time Flux tried to copy the shadow moth's form, they shuddered and quickly changed back to their normal appearance. Each presentation followed the same pattern. The students would describe the creature's biology, explain its hunting methods, discuss its weaknesses, and conclude with survival strategies. They were academic exercises, filled with scientific data and careful analysis. Marcus watched each presentation carefully, taking notes not just on what was said, but on how his classmates reacted to different types of information. He noticed that they all focused on the same things: how to avoid the creatures, how to defend against them, how to escape if encountered. Finally, it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the front of the class, carrying only his simple notebook and a datapad that looked ancient compared to everyone else's equipment. He stood at the center of the stage, looking comfortable and relaxed. "Thank you, Professor Zexai, for letting me present last," Marcus began. "I know my topic is different from what everyone else has chosen. Instead of analyzing a known species, I want to discuss what I believe would be the perfect apex deathworld predator." The holographic display activated, showing a star map. Marcus touched his datapad, and the map zoomed in on a small yellow star in an outer spiral arm of the galaxy. "Me tell you about a theoretical species," Marcus continued, his voice calm and conversational. "Imagine a creature that evolved on a world so dangerous that simply surviving to adulthood was an achievement. This world would have extreme weather, natural disasters, and multiple competing predators." The display changed to show a planet that looked remarkably similar to the theoretical death world Professor Zexai had described weeks earlier. "Our theoretical species would not be the biggest or strongest predator on their world," Marcus said. "Instead, they would survive through intelligence and adaptability. They would be persistence hunters, which means they do not need to be faster than their prey. They just need to be more patient." Lirelei felt her glow beginning to flicker. Something about Marcus's tone was making her nervous. He sounded like he was describing something real, not theoretical. "These creatures would be pack hunters," Marcus continued, "but not like simple animal packs. They would be able to coordinate with members of their species they had never met before, united by abstract concepts like loyalty, justice, or revenge." Professor Zexai's skin was slowly turning purple, the color that meant he was becoming concerned. "Most importantly," Marcus said, "this species would be tool users. Not just simple tools, but complex technologies that would extend their hunting range across vast distances. Eventually, they would develop the ability to hunt between stars." The display now showed spaceships, simple designs, but clearly built for long-range travel. "The fascinating thing about this theoretical species is their psychology," Marcus continued. "They would not be mindless killers like the shadow moths or single-minded converters like the crystalline swarm. They would be reasonable. They would negotiate, make treaties, establish trade relationships." Marcus paused and looked around the room. Every student was staring at him with growing alarm. "They would be excellent neighbors," Marcus said with his pleasant smile. "Right. Up until someone threatened their pack." A Nexary student in the front row was rapidly shifting between different defensive forms, unable to decide which one might protect them from whatever Marcus was describing. "When threatened, this species would not just defend themselves," Marcus continued. They would eliminate the threat completely, not out of cruelty, but out of practical necessity. On a death world, threats that are not permanently dealt with come back stronger. Professor Zexai's skin was now deep purple, almost black. "Marcus," he said carefully, "this is a very detailed theoretical analysis. Where did you get your research data?" Marcus smiled wider, and for the first time since the semester began. His expression looked genuinely pleased rather than politely. "Pleasant. From personal experience, Professor." The room fell completely silent. Even the Catherians stopped their constant humming. "You see," Marcus said, touching his datapad again, "this species is not theoretical at all. They are quite real. They call themselves humans, and they come from a planet called Earth." The star map zoomed in further, showing the solar system in detail. A small blue and green world appeared in the display, looking beautiful and peaceful. "The interesting thing about humans," Marcus continued, "is that they have already begun to spread beyond their death world. They have been quietly making contact with galactic civilization for several years now." Marcus gestured to himself. "In fact, one of them has been sitting in this classroom all semester, learning about the galaxy's most dangerous creatures and taking notes on how the galaxy's most advanced species react to threats." Liralay's glow was now so dim it was barely visible. Through her empathic abilities, she could feel the terror building in every student around her. "The really fascinating part," Marcus said, his voice still conversational and friendly, "is that humans have spent this entire time being polite, curious, and helpful. They have made friends, shared knowledge, and proven themselves to be wonderful neighbors." He paused, his smile becoming something that no longer looked entirely human. "But they have also been studying everyone very carefully, learning about galactic military capabilities, political structures, economic systems, and most importantly, what makes each species afraid." Marcus closed his notebook and looked directly at Professor Zexai. "I believe that makes humans the most dangerous species in the galaxy, Professor. Not because they are evil or aggressive, but because they are practical. They understand that the best way to survive is to make sure everyone else wants them to survive." The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus Chen, the quiet human student, who had seemed so harmless, had just revealed himself to be exactly the kind of apex predator. They had been studying all semester. The only difference was that this one had been studying them back. The silence in the classroom stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Marcus stood calmly at the front of the room, hands folded behind his back like a teacher finishing a normal lesson. The holographic display still showed Earth spinning slowly above the stage, looking peaceful and harmless. Professor Zexai was the first to speak. His crystal skin had turned completely black, something that had never happened in his decades of teaching. "Marcus," the professor whispered, his voice barely audible. "What are you?" Marcus tilted his head slightly as if the question confused him. "I am exactly what I have always told you I am, Professor. I am a human being from the planet Earth. I am a student at this academy, here to learn about xenobiology and dangerous species." His tone was still pleasant and conversational, which somehow made everything worse. "But you just said," Professor Zexai began, then stopped. His skin flickered between black and deep purple as he struggled to process what had just happened. "I said that humans are an apex, death-world species," Marcus agreed calmly. "That is true. I also said that I am human. That is also true. I never lied to any of you." Liralay's translucent form was barely visible now, her empathic glow almost completely gone. "You have been studying us," she said, her voice shaking. "All this time, you have been learning our weaknesses." Marcus looked at her with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Liralay, are you feeling all right? You look very pale. Do not pretend to care about me," she said, her voice getting stronger. "You are a predator. We are your prey." Marcus's expression became serious for the first time since anyone had known him. "Liralay, I do care about you. I care about all of you. That is exactly why I am here." A Catherian collective near the back of the room spoke in their harmonic voice, but now it sounded discordant and afraid. "Explain what you mean, human." Marcus nodded respectfully toward them. My species has decided that it is time to make formal contact with galactic civilization. But before we could do that safely, we needed to understand what we would be dealing with. He gestured around the classroom. What better way to learn than to study alongside the galaxy's brightest students? To see how you think, how you learn, how you react to threats? So, this was all a lie, Professor Zexai said, his skin now cycling rapidly through different colors of distress. No, Marcus said firmly. Everything I have done here has been genuine. I really am interested in xenobiology. Really did want to learn about dangerous species. I really do consider all of you my friends. He paused, and his pleasant smile returned. I just also happened to be gathering intelligence for my government at the same time. A Nexari student near the front, who had been shifting between defensive forms throughout the conversation, finally managed to speak. But you look so normal, so harmless. How can you be an apex predator? Marcus laughed, and the sound was warm and genuinely amused. That is exactly the point. Humans did not become the dominant species on a death world by looking scary. We did it by being underestimated. He walked closer to the students, and several of them involuntarily moved back in their seats. Do you know how humans hunt? Really hunt? Marcus asked conversationally. We do not use claws or fangs or venom. We use patience. We follow our prey for days, weeks, months, if necessary. We track them until they are too tired to run anymore, and then we kill them. Professor Zex's voice was barely a whisper. And that is what you have been doing to us? Hunting us? Marcus stopped walking and looked genuinely surprised. Hunting? You, Professor? Why would we hunt you? The confusion in his voice seemed real, which somehow made it even more terrifying. We are not interested in hunting galactic civilization, Marcus continued. We want to join it. But we needed to make sure it was safe for us to reveal ourselves. He looked around the room at all the frightened faces. See? Humans have learned something very important over our long history. The most dangerous time for any species is when they first meet another intelligent species. That moment determines everything that comes after. Marcus sat down on the edge of the stage, making himself look smaller and less threatening. But somehow, this casual pose made him seem even more dangerous. So we sent scouts, he said simply. People like me, to learn about galactic society from the inside, to understand your capabilities, your politics, your fears, to figure out how to approach you in a way that would not result in conflict. Professor Zexai asked, though he seemed afraid to hear the answer. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. Learned that galactic civilization is made up of good people who want to live in peace. I learned that you value knowledge, cooperation, and diversity. I learned that most of you would rather run from a fight than start one. His expression became more serious. I also learned that you are not prepared for what humans represent. You study monsters, but you think of them as distant threats. You have never had to live next to an apex predator that could also be your neighbor, your friend, your trading partner. Lyriele found her voice again. What do you want from us? Nothing hostile, Marcus said quickly. My people want the same. Things most species want. Trade, knowledge, friendship, a place in the galactic community. He paused. We just want to make sure that everyone understands the ground rules, which are. Professor Zexai asked. Marcus stood up again, and his pleasant demeanor shifted slightly. For just a moment, every student in the room could see something else behind his friendly exterior. Something ancient and predatory and absolutely certain. Of its own capabilities, humans make excellent friends and terrible enemies, Marcus said quietly. We will honor our agreements, protect our allies, and respect galactic law. We will be good neighbors. He paused, and his smile became something that was still friendly, but no longer entirely safe. But if anyone threatens our pack, if anyone tries to hurt the people we care about, then they will learn why humans are the apex predators on a death world, and that lesson will be permanent. The classroom remained silent as Marcus gathered his simple notebook and datapad. Thank you all for a wonderful semester, he said, his voice returning to its normal, pleasant tone. I have learned so much from each of you. Professor Zexai, this has been the most educational class I have ever taken. As he walked toward the door, Marcus paused and turned back one final time. Oh, and do not worry about what happens next. Earth has already decided to proceed with formal first contact. Our diplomatic ships should be arriving within the next few days. He smiled that same warm, friendly smile they had all grown used to over the semester. After all, we have spent months learning that galactic civilization is full of reasonable people who can be trusted with the truth. You've all helped prove that humans and the rest of the galaxy can be friends. Marcus opened the door and stepped into the hallway. As long as everyone remembers, he called back cheerfully, that the most dangerous predator in any room is usually the one that does not look dangerous at all. The door closed softly behind him, leaving Class 10 in complete silence. Outside, Marcus Chen walked across the campus of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute, already composing his report in his head. The other students had reacted exactly as his superiors had predicted. Fear, yes, but also curiosity and a desire to understand. They could work with that. He pulled out a simple communication device and activated it. Marcus to Earth's command. Mission complete. Recommend proceeding with diplomatic contact as planned. The galaxy is ready for us. Above Kepler Prime 3, ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were clearly human in design, but they broadcast no hostile intent. Instead, they transmitted a simple message in every galactic language. Greetings from the people of Earth. We come in peace, seeking friendship and mutual understanding. We believe it is time our species got to know each other properly. Inside the institute, Professor Zexai was still standing in his empty classroom, trying to process what had just happened. His skin had finally settled on a pale blue color that meant he was thinking very hard. After 30 minutes of silence, he walked to his communication panel and activated it. This is Professor Zexai to the Galactic Council emergency session. We need to talk. Immediately. He paused, looking at the spot where Marcus had stood during his presentation. It appears we have been studying monsters all semester while one of them was studying us back. And the terrifying thing is, I think they might actually be friendly. The communication panel crackled to life as emergency signals began flooding. In from across the galaxy, the age of human isolation was over. The age of human diplomacy had begun. The alarm rang through the Galactic Council chamber like a scream. Red lights flashed on every wall as the emergency meeting began. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled their seats quickly. Their faces showed fear and worry. Ambassador Zethkara from the Vegan Collective stood at the center. Her blue skin was pale with stress. The long tentacles on her head moved in quick, nervous patterns. She had called this meeting. She had bad news to share.
Now, members of the council,
she began. Her voice shook. We have received a distress call from Kepler 4 for Debye. The mining colony there is in terrible danger. The chamber went quiet. Ow. People lived on that colony. They were miners and their families. Good people who worked hard to dig valuable metals from the planet's crust. Zethkara pressed a button. A large screen appeared in the air above her. It showed the colony from space. What everyone saw made them gasp. The colony sat on the planet's surface like a small city. But around the planet, space was full of rocks. Huge asteroids spun and crashed into each other. They moved fast and wild. Some were as big as mountains. A rogue planet passed through their system 3 days ago, Zethkara explained. Pulled an entire asteroid belt out of orbit. The rocks are now falling toward the colony. They have less than 72 hours before the asteroids destroy everything. Archivist spoke up. The crystal being's voice sounded like wind chimes. What about their defenses? Their shields? Gone, Zethkara said sadly. The first wave of small rocks knocked out their defense grid. Their evacuation ships are trapped in their hangars. The asteroid field is too thick. Any ship that tries to leave gets smashed to pieces. Constructor rolled forward on its metal wheels. Its silicon body gleamed under the chamber lights. Our rescue ships cannot handle such conditions. The debris would tear through our hulls. The ethereal collective's vessels are too delicate, whispered a voice like flowing gas. We cannot risk our crews in such chaos. More voices joined in. Every species had the same problem. Our ships were not built for this kind of danger. Their rescue equipment was not strong enough. The asteroid field was too violent, too deadly. Zethkara felt despair growing in her chest. So we just watched them die? 50,000 innocent people? The chamber fell silent again. No one had an answer. No one knew what to do. Then a quiet voice spoke from the back of the room. Earth will handle it. Everyone turned to look. Commander. Sarah Chen sat in the human section. She was small compared to most of the other beings in the room. Her brown hair was pulled back neatly. Her dark eyes were calm and steady. Zethkara blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, Commander Chen. Did you say Earth would handle it? Yes, Sarah said simply. She stood up slowly. We'll take care of the rescue. Nervous laughter came from some of the aliens. The archivist's crystals chimed softly. Commander, we appreciate the offer. But perhaps you don't understand the situation. This isn't a medical emergency or a food shortage. This is a complex military operation in extremely dangerous conditions. Sarah's face didn't change. I understand perfectly. A vegan official spoke up. Humans are, well, you're farmers mostly, and artists. Your people make beautiful music and grow wonderful crops. But this requires serious military capability. Your ships are small, added a constructor. Built for trade and exploration, not for combat or heavy rescue work. Sarah nodded politely. Is that what you think? Well, yes, Zethkara said gently. Earth joined the Confederation only 15 years ago. It's a protected developing species. Your planet was classified as suitable for agriculture and cultural exchange, not military operations. More murmurs went around the room. The aliens all agreed. Humans were nice people, peaceful. They made good food and interesting art. They were friendly traders and curious explorers, but they weren't warriors. They weren't built for dangerous rescue missions. Sarah Chen listened to all of this. Without saying a word, her expression stayed calm. It's almost amused. So you don't want our help? Oh, she asked. It's not that we don't want it, Zethkara said quickly. We're grateful for any assistance. Perhaps Earth could send medical supplies. Food, temporary shelters for the survivors. Survivors. Sarah repeated the word slowly. Well, yes, when we managed to evacuate some of the colonists. Surely you understand we can't save everyone. The situation is impossible. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She looked around the room at all the worried faces, at all the beings who had given up. Hope, you're planning to save only some of them, she said. It's the best we can do, the constructor said sadly. We might save 10,000, maybe 15 if we're lucky. And the rest? No one answered. They all looked at the floor. Sarah Chen pulled out a small device and spoke into it. Chen 2 Terran Command, Emergency Authorization 7. Full fleet. Deployment to Kepler-4 for 2B. We have 50,000 civilians to extract from a Class 5 asteroid bombardment zone. The aliens stared at her. Voice crackled back through her device. It was deep and calm. Copy that, Commander. Fleet is spinning up now. ITA to target system is 18 hours. Sarah put the device away. She looked at the shocked faces around. Her? We don't plan to save some of them, she said quietly. We're going to save all of them. Zethkara. S tentacles froze in surprise. All of them? Commander, that's impossible. The asteroid field is too dangerous. O ship can survive in those conditions. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. You keep talking about our ships like you've seen them, she said, but you haven't. You've seen our trade vessels, our exploration craft, our passenger ships. She walked toward the center of the room. Her boots clicked on the metal floor. You've never seen our real ships. The chamber was completely silent now. Every eye was on the small human woman. Earth was classified as a Class 12 deathworld. Sarah continued. Do you know what that means? It means our planet tries to kill everything that lives on it. Every day. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Everything on Earth is designed to survive in hell. She stopped in front of Zethkara, and we didn't just survive. We became the apex predators. The ambassador's blue skin turned even paler. What are you saying? Sarah's smile grew wider. I'm saying you asked the wrong species for help. You asked farmers and artists to save your people. She turned to address the entire chamber. But you didn't ask humans. You didn't ask deathworlders. The room was so quiet that everyone could hear their own heartbeats. Our fleet will be there in 18 hours, Sarah said. And we're going to show you what happens when someone threatens our friends. She walked back to her seat and sat down calmly. The aliens sat in stunned silence. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. 18 hours later, space near Kepler 44 to be exploded with light. The alien rescue ships had been floating safely outside the asteroid field for days. Their crews watched helplessly as rocks the size of cities crashed into each other. Every few minutes, another piece of debris would slam into the planet's surface. Time was running out for the colony below. Then the human fleet arrived. Captain Nexron of the vegan rescue vessel nearly dropped his scanning device. By the void, he whispered. What are those things? 12 massive ships had just dropped out of hyperspace. They were not like any human vessels the galaxy had ever seen. These ships were huge, dark, built like weapons instead of homes. The lead ship was the size of a small moon. Its hull was black metal covered in armor plates. Weapons bristled from every surface. The name painted on its side read Indomitable in letters big enough to see from orbit. This is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. A voice crackled over the communication channels. The face that appeared on the screens made several aliens step back in fear. Rodriguez was scarred. His left eye was metal. His jaw looked like it had been broken and rebuilt. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold, like winter ice. We're here for the evacuation, he said simply. Captain Nexron found his voice. Captain Rodriguez, with respect, the asteroid field is too dangerous. We've lost 3 ships already trying to get through. The debris will tear your vessels apart. Rodriguez looked at him for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. Hi, Captain, with respect. You don't know what our ships can do.
Behind.
The Indomitable, the other human vessels, began to move. They formed a wedge shape pointed straight at the asteroid field. Ships with names like Iron Fist and Planet Breaker and Void Hunter lined up in perfect formation. The aliens watched, in growing horror as they realized what the humans were planning. You're not going around the field, Dextron said. You're going through it, correct, Rodriguez replied. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen next to the captain. She looked much friendlier than Rodriguez, but her words were just as frightening. Don't worry, she said to the alien observers. This is what we do. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Our ships are built the same way we are, to survive anything. She pulled up charts and data on her screen. Earth is what we call a Class 12 deathworld. The gravity is twice what most species can handle. Even our plants are poisonous. Dexron looked at the data and felt sick. How do you survive on such a planet? We don't just survive, Dr. Vasquez said. We became the strongest things on it. Every human you've met is a descendant of creatures that fought their way to the top of the deadliest food chain in known space. She gestured to the ships around them. These vessels aren't built to avoid danger. They're built to punch through. It is as if to prove her point, the human fleet began moving into the asteroid field. The aliens expected to see the ships dodge and weave between the rocks. Instead, They watched in shock as the Indomitable simply rammed straight through an asteroid the size of a building. The rock exploded into dust. The human ship didn't even slow down. "Impossible," whispered an archivist observer. "The kinetic energy alone should have destroyed them." "Our hulls are made from compressed neutronium steel," Dr. Vasquez explained casually. "The same material we use to build structures on Earth. You need something that strong just to stand up under our gravity." More human ships pushed into the field. When they hit asteroids, the rocks broke. When debris bounced off their hulls, it left no marks. The humans moved through the deadly field like it was empty space. Behind the warships came other vessels, huge industrial ships that looked like flying factories. As the aliens watched, these ships began eating the asteroids. "What are they doing?" Dexron asked. "Mining," Dr. Vasquez said, "turning the debris into raw materials. Metal for building temporary shelters, oxygen and water from the ice rocks, fuel for our ships." "You're harvesting the disaster," Dexron said in amazement. "We don't waste anything. It's how you survive on a death world." The human fleet worked with terrifying efficiency. In just 2 hours, they had carved a wide path through the asteroid field. The path led straight to the colony planet, but that wasn't the most frightening part. The most frightening part was the thing they were building in the center of their formation. The humans had begun assembling something massive. Pieces came out of their ships and locked together in space. Robot workers welded and connected parts with mechanical precision. "What is that?" Dexron asked. Captain Rodriguez answered. "Mobile Command Fortress. They'll serve as our base of operations for the rescue." "How long will it take to build?" 6 hours. Dexron checked his instruments. "The colony has less than 50 hours before the next wave of asteroids hits." "Then we better get moving," Rodriguez said, as they watched. Swarms of smaller human ships launched from the main fleet. These were not the peaceful trade vessels the galaxy knew. These were dropships, combat transports, ships designed to land on hostile worlds and deliver soldiers who could fight in any environment. "What are you landing?" Dexron asked. "Everything," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Emergency shelters, medical equipment, food processors, transport vehicles, and about 10,000 Marines in powered armor. 10,000 soldiers for a rescue mission?" Rodriguez looked at him seriously. "Captain, we're not just rescuing these people. We're relocating an entire colony in less than 2 days. That's a military operation on the scale of planetary invasion." "But these are civilians, miners, and their families. They're people who need help," Rodriguez said simply. "That makes them our responsibility." The alien observers fell silent as they watched the human operation unfold. Ships that could survive ramming through asteroids. Industrial vessels that could eat space debris and turn it into building materials. Soldiers who could work in the vacuum of space like it was their natural environment, and all of it organized with the cold efficiency of a machine designed for war. "How many rescue operations like this have you done?" Dexron asked quietly. Dr. Vasquez smiled sadly. "This is our first one since joining the Confederation." "Your first? But you work like you've done this 1,000 times." "We have," she said, "just not in space. On Earth, disasters like this happen every few months. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts. We've been running rescue operations since before we discovered fire." She gestured to the human fleet carving its way through the asteroid field like it was built for this exact purpose. The difference is scale. On Earth, we save thousands of people at a time. Today, we're saving 50,000. Rodriguez appeared on screen again. "All ships prepare for planetfall. First wave of evacuees will be loaded in 36 hours. We have work to do." The alien observers watched as humanity unleashed itself on the problem. It asked for aid. They were getting something much more dangerous. They were getting deathworlders, who had decided that something was worth protecting. The first human dropship hit the colony's surface like a meteor. But instead of explosion, there was organization. Within minutes, armored figures poured out of the landed ship, moved with purpose across the rocky ground. Each human soldier wore powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that glowed with data displays. Inside the colony's emergency bunker, The trapped civilians watched through security cameras. They were a mix of species from across the galaxy. Vegan families with their children, archivist scholars, constructor engineers. All of them had lived and worked together peacefully for years. Now they huddled in fear as death reigned from the Skydot Colony Administrator Velktar was a tall vegan with deep blue skin. He had run this mining operation for 10 years. He had never seen anything like what was happening outside. "Are those really humans?" asked Dr. Morgan, the colony's chief scientist. She was an archivist, her crystal body flickering with nervous energy. "The Confederation said humans were peaceful," Velktar replied. "Farmers and artists. They watched as the armored humans set up equipment with mechanical precision. Large machines appeared from nowhere. Prefabricated buildings unfolded like flowers blooming in fast motion. Within an hour, there was a small city outside their bunker. Then one of the humans knocked on their door. Velktar opened the airlock carefully. The human who stood there was huge, even without the armor. When she removed her helmet, they saw a woman with short black hair and kind eyes. But her smile showed teeth that looked very sharp. "Administrator Velktar, I'm Sergeant Maria Santos, Terran Marine Corps. We're here to get you folks out of this mess." Velktar tried to find words. "Sergeant, the asteroid field above us is impossible to cross. We've lost every ship that tried to leave." Santos looked up at the sky, where rocks were still falling like deadly rain. "That does look pretty nasty. Good thing we didn't come the normal way." "What do you mean?" "We came through it," she said simply. "Our ships are built tough. He had to punch through about 50 miles of spinning death rocks to get here, but that's just Tuesday for us." Dr. Morgan stepped forward. "How is that possible? Kinetic energy alone should have destroyed any vessel." Santos shrugged. "Doc, where I come from, call what's happening up there light weather. You should see what happens when Earth gets really angry." She gestured to the activity outside. "We've got temporary housing for all 50,000 of you, medical facilities, food processing, entertainment for the kids. Everything you need while we load you onto the transports." "Transports?" Velktar asked. "But the asteroid field, ... is being cleared as we speak," Santos finished. "Our mining ships are eating their way through it. Should have a nice clean corridor opened up in about 12 hours, as if summoned by." Her words, explosions lit up the sky above them. But these weren't random impacts. These were controlled detonations, precise and calculated. "What's happening up there?" Dr. Morgan asked. Santos tapped a device on her wrist. Images appeared in the air, showing space above the planet. Human ships moved through the asteroid field like sharks through water. When they encountered rocks too big to push aside, they simply blew them up. "That's Corporal, right?" Santos said, pointing to a figure jumping between asteroids and space. "He's setting shaped charges to break up the big ones. Standard demolition work." The aliens watched in horror as the human soldier leaped from rock to rock in the vacuum of space. He moved like he was jumping between stepping stones in a stream. Each time he landed, he planted an explosive device and jumped to the next asteroid. "He's in space," Dr. Morgan whispered. "No ship, no safety line. It's just his armor," Santos confirmed. "Powered exoskeleton with 8 hours of life support. More than enough for this job." "What if he misses a jump?" Santos looked at her strangely. "Doc, humans have been jumping between dangerous places since before we had tools. It's what we do." More explosions followed. The human soldier finished his work and jetted back toward one of the ships using thrusters built into his armor. He moved through the deadly field like he was flying through empty air. "How long have your people been doing things like this?" Velktar asked. "Rescue operations? About 2 million years, give or take. We've been pulling each other out of danger since we learned to walk upright." Santos led them outside to see the human base camp. What had been empty ground an hour ago was now a small city. Buildings, vehicles, equipment, and people working with purpose. "The dangerous stuff," she continued. "Jumping between rocks and space, fighting through asteroid fields, landing on hostile planets. That's just military training. Every human Marine learns this stuff." Constructor engineer named Zixtel rolled up to them on his metal wheels. "Sergeant Santos, this is remarkable. How did you build all this so quickly?" Practice, she replied. On Earth, we have to set up emergency camps all the time. Hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions. Natural disasters happen every few weeks somewhere on our planet. Every few weeks, Dr. Morgan asked in shock. Sometimes more often than that. Earth is what we call geologically active. The ground moves. The weather tries to kill everything. The ocean rises and falls. Mountains explode. Pretty standard stuff. Ixtal's optical sensors blinked rapidly. How do you survive on such a world? We adapted, Santos said. Your planet tries to kill you every day, you'll learn to be ready for anything. Above them, the human ships continued their work. They moved through the asteroid field with casual confidence, treating the deadly space debris like a minor inconvenience. Every few minutes, another section of the field would explode into manageable pieces. Are they destroying the entire field? Veltar asked. Just the dangerous parts, Santos replied. The rocks heading for the planet, the big ones that block our escape route. The rest were harvesting for raw materials. Harvesting? Santos pointed to a group of massive industrial ships. They were literally eating asteroids, breaking them down into component materials and storing them in their cargo holds. Metal for building materials, ice for water and oxygen, rare elements for electronics. Nothing goes to waste when humans are involved. A new alarm sounded from the colony's emergency systems. A massive asteroid, bigger than any they had seen, was falling toward them. The tracking computers showed it would hit the colony directly in less than 20 minutes. The colonists began to panic. But Santos just tapped her wrist device again. Santos, too, indomitable. We've got a big one coming in, requesting fire support. Aped. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled back. Copy that, Sergeant. Target acquired. Stand by for fireworks. High above, the human battleship turned to face the incoming asteroid. Weapons that had been hidden behind armor plates emerged from the ship's hull. They were massive, clearly designed. For destroying things much larger than ships? What are those? Dr. Morgan asked. Planetary defense cannons, Santos said casually. We use them for asteroid mining back home. You can crack a moon if you need them to. The Indomitable fired. Beams of energy that made the sun look dim reached out across space. They hit the massive asteroid dead center. The rock, which had been big enough to destroy the entire colony, simply vanished, turned to dust in an instant. The colonists stared in silence. Then Veltar found his voice. You carry weapons that can destroy moons? Santos nodded. Standard equipment on exploration vessels. You never know when you might need to clear some space debris. Space debris? Dr. Morgan repeated weakly. That's what we call it. Rocks floating in space where they don't belong. She looked at the aliens' shocked faces and seemed to realize something. All right, you folks probably aren't used to this kind of thing. Don't worry. We'll have you out of here safely in no time. Atanzos smiled again, showing those sharp teeth. Trust me, this is what humans do. We protect our friends. The evacuation went like clockwork until Corporal James Wright died. It happened during the third day of operations. The human Marines had been working non-stop to load colonists onto transport ships. Families with children went first, then the elderly and sick. The process was smooth and efficient. Wright was helping load a group of archivist children onto a transport when the accident happened. A piece of debris no bigger than a dinner plate came spinning out of the asteroid field. It moved too fast for anyone to see. The metal fragment punched through Wright's armor like it was paper. Emergency alarms screamed from his suit.
Our red warning lights
Flashed across his helmet display. Dr. Morgan was standing nearby when it happened. She saw the human soldier stagger, saw the hole in his chest armor, saw the air leaking out in a white. Cloud medic, someone shouted. Wright looked down at the hole in his chest. Then he looked at the 3 archivist children who were still climbing into the transport. They were scared, crying. They needed help. Wright stepped forward and lifted the first child. His suit alarms got louder. More air leaked out with each movement, but he kept working. Corporal, you need medical attention, Dr. Morgan said. You're losing pressure. Kids first. Wright replied. His voice was calm through the suit radio. Always, kids first. He lifted the second child, then the third. Made sure they were safely strapped in. Only then did he allow the human medics to reach him by the time they got his helmet off. Wright was blue from lack of oxygen. Dr. Morgan had studied human anatomy, but seeing it up close was different. His rib cage was built like armor. His heart was huge, with thick walls designed to pump blood even under high pressure. His bones were dense as metal. But even deathworld or biology had limits. "I've got 3 kids," Wright whispered to Sergeant Santos as the medics worked on him. "Back on Earth. Take care of these ones for me." Then he closed his eyes and stopped breathing. The human medics tried everything. Drugs that would kill most aliens, electric shocks that could restart a stopped heart, surgery right there on the ground with tools that looked like weapons. Nothing worked. Dr. Morgan watched a human die for the first time. She had expected it to be different somehow. More dramatic, but Wright just looked like he was sleeping. What surprised her was how the other humans reacted. They didn't stop working. Sergeant Santos closed Wright's eyes gently. Then she picked up his equipment and kept loading colonists. The other Marines did the same. They worked harder than before, faster, with a cold efficiency that made Dr. Morgan's crystals dim with fear. "Shouldn't you stop?" she asked Santos. "Shouldn't you mourn him?" Santos looked at her with eyes like winter ice. "We'll mourn him when everyone is safe. Right now, we have work to do. But he's dead. He died saving our children." "That's what humans do," Santos replied. "We die for each other. We die for strangers. We die for people we've never met, because it's the right thing to do." She gestured to the other Marines loading colonists. "Every one of these soldiers knows they might not go home. It came anyway, because 50,000 people needed help." Dr. Morgan followed Santos to the next transport. "How can you be so calm about death? Because being upset won't bring him back. But saving more lives will make his death mean something." Continued, but now Dr. Morgan noticed things she had missed before. The way the humans moved with mechanical precision, the way they checked and double-checked everything, the way they treated each colonist like their own family. She also noticed the cost. More human soldiers were getting hurt. Not all of them died like Wright, but injuries were constant. Broken bones from working in heavy gravity, burns from handling dangerous equipment, cuts from sharp metal debris. Any one of these injuries would put an alien in the hospital for weeks. The humans just bandaged themselves and kept working. "How do you handle so much pain?" Dr. Morgan asked a Marine named Collins. He was loading heavy equipment with a bandaged arm that was clearly broken. "A pain means you're still alive," Collins replied. "Dead people don't hurt, but your arm is broken. It's my left arm. I can still work with my right." Dr. Morgan watched him lift a crate that weighed more than she did. "With one good arm?" Like it was nothing. "Are all humans like this?" Collins thought about it pretty much. You have to be tough to survive on Earth. Everything there wants to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even some of the rocks. The rocks, radiation, toxic minerals, unstable ground. Earth is not a friendly place. He loaded another crate, but it made us strong enough to help people who need it. By the 4th day, almost all the colonists were loaded onto transports. Only a few thousand remained on the planet. The human operation had worked perfectly. No colonist had been lost. No alien had been hurt. But the humans had paid a price. 3 more soldiers had died. Dozens were injured. They kept working anyway. Dr. Morgan found herself staying close to the human base camp. She wanted to understand these strange beings. Who threw their lives away for strangers? Late at night, she saw Sergeant Santos sitting alone. The Marine was cleaning Wright's rifle. Her hands moved with practiced care, checking every part. "What will you do with that?" Dr. Morgan asked. "Send it home to his family," Santos replied, "along with his medals and his personal effects." "What will you tell his children?" Santos was quiet for a long moment. That their father died saving kids, that he was a hero, that they should be proud of him. Will that help them? No. Nothing helps when you lose someone you love. But knowing why he died might help them understand why it mattered. Dr. Morgan sat down next to the human. Why do you do this? Why do you risk everything for people you don't know? Up at the stars, because someone has to. 'Cause if we don't, who will? The Confederation has other species. Other militaries? Name one that would fly through an asteroid field to save strangers. Dr. Morgan tried to think of an answer. She couldn't? This is what we are, Santos continued. We protect things. It's built into us. Our families, our friends, our communities. And now that we're part of the galaxy, that includes everyone, she went back to cleaning the rifle. Right, knew the risks, we all do. But he also knew that 3 children needed help. For humans, that's an easy choice. Even if it kills you. Especially if it kills us. Death is just the price we pay for doing what's right. The transport ships continued loading through the night. By morning, only 500 colonists remained on the planet. The evacuation was almost complete. But the humans weren't done yet. They had one more surprise for the galaxy, and this one would change everything. The last transport ship lifted off from Kepler 44 to be at dawn on the 5th day. All 50,000 colonists were safe. The evacuation was complete. The mission was over. But the human fleet didn't leave. Instead, they got busy. Dr. Morgan watched. From the observation deck of the vegan rescue ship, below them, the human vessels moved with purpose around the planet. They weren't preparing to depart. They were preparing to stay. What are they doing? She asked Captain Nexron. The vegan officer checked his instruments. I'm not sure they appear to be building something. On the planet's surface, human construction crews worked around the clock, the temporary shelters they had built for. The evacuation were being replaced with permanent structures. Mining equipment appeared from the cargo holds of the industrial ships. Power generators hummed to life in space above the planet. Something even more impressive was taking shape. The mobile fortress the humans had assembled during the rescue was growing. New sections were being added every hour. Weapons platforms. Sensor arrays. Docking bays for ships. What had started as a temporary command post was becoming a permanent installation. This is Captain Rodriguez. The human commander's voice came over the communication channels. All rescue ships are cleared to depart. The colonists will be transferred to their new homes as requested. Captain Nexron activated his communication system. Captain Rodriguez, what about your fleet? Rodriguez appeared on the screen. His scarred face showed no emotion. We're not leaving, Captain. I don't understand. We're staying here. This won't happen again. Dr. Morgan leaned forward. Captain Rodriguez, the asteroid threat is over. The field has been cleared. There's no reason to maintain a presence here. Doctor, with respect, you're wrong. There's every reason to maintain a presence here. The communication channel filled with other voices. Alien captains from a dozen species all asking the same questions. What were the humans doing? Why weren't they leaving? What was the purpose of the fortress? Commander Sarah Chen's voice cut through the confusion. She was aboard the Indomitable, speaking from the bridge. This is what protection looks like.
How?
The screen changed to show a tactical display of the local star system. Red markers showed the paths of rogue asteroids. Yellow markers showed other potential threats. Green markers showed safe shipping lanes. We've established a monitoring station. Here, Chen explained. Early warning systems that can detect threats from 3 light years away. Automated defense platforms that can destroy incoming objects before they become dangerous. A garrison of Marines ready to respond to any emergency. But why? Asked Captain Nexron. The immediate danger is over. The immediate danger, Rodriguez said, was just one asteroid field. This system sits on a major shipping route. Millions of beings pass through here every year. If something like this happens again, we'll be ready. Dr. Morgan felt a chill run through her crystal structure. How long will you stay? Forever, Chen replied simply. This is our sector now. The aliens fell silent. Implications were staggering. Humans weren't just rescuing the colonists. They were claiming responsibility for protecting the entire star system. You can't just declare ownership of a star system, protested a constructor captain. The Confederation has laws about territorial expansion. We're not claiming ownership, Rodriguez said. We're claiming responsibility. There's a difference. What difference? Owners take things for themselves. Guardians protect things for everyone. Chen brought up more data on the tactical display. We've already begun upgrading the shipping lanes. Better navigation beacons. Emergency supply stations. Patrol routes to keep pirates away. Any ship that passes through this system will be safer because we're here. And if the Confederation objects, asked Dexron. Rodriguez smiled his cold smile. Let them object. We didn't ask permission to save those colonists. We're not asking permission to protect them now. The communication channels erupted with arguments. Some aliens supported the human decision. Others called it illegal expansion. Still others worried about the military implications. Chen let them argue for a few minutes. Then she spoke again. 3 days ago, you all sat in the Galactic Council and decided that 50,000 people were going to die. You called it impossible. To save them, you started planning funerals instead of rescues. Her voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute authority. We didn't accept that. We came here and saved every single life, and now we're making sure it never happens again. But you're just one species, protested the constructor captain. You can't protect the entire galaxy. Watch us, Rodriguez, said Dr. Morgan realized what she was witnessing. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a declaration. Humanity was announcing to the galaxy that they would no longer accept preventable deaths. They would no longer allow tragedies that could be stopped with sufficient force and will. You're not asking for permission, she said quietly. You're telling us what you're going to do. Now you're beginning to understand, Chen replied. Captain Nextron looked at his instruments again. Captain Rodriguez, our sensors show that you're building more than just a monitoring station. Those are military-grade installations. Correct. This is a forward operating base for the Terran Defense Force. Defense against what? Rodriguez's expression grew even colder. Against anything that threatens the people we've sworn to protect. Pirates who attack shipping, warlords who prey on weak colonies, natural disasters that can be prevented with proper preparation. He gestured to the growing fortress. And against anyone who thinks they can hurt innocent people while we're watching. The alien captains began to understand. The humans weren't just protecting this one system. They were establishing a military presence in galactic space. They were positioning themselves to intervene anywhere they felt it was necessary. The Confederation will never approve this, Thexerin said. Confederation? Chen replied, classified. Us as a protected developing species 15 years ago. They assumed we needed their protection. She paused. They got it backwards. We're not here to be protected. We're here to be the protectors. Messages began flooding in from other ships in the area. Merchant vessels requesting permission to dock. At the human station, colony ships asking for escort through dangerous space. Even military vessels from other species offering to coordinate patrols. The galaxy had gotten its first real look at what humans were capable of. And instead of fear, many felt something else: relief. For the first time in galactic history, there was a species willing to fight for strangers. Willing to die for people they had never met. Willing to stand between the innocent and anything that would hurt them. This changes everything, Dr. Morgan whispered. Yes, Chen agreed. It does. Rodriguez appeared on screen one final time. All civilian vessels are cleared to approach the station for supplies and assistance. Military vessels requesting coordination should contact our defense coordinator. And to anyone listening who might be thinking about causing trouble in this, Sector ... Double quotes. His smile was not pleasant at all. Think again. This system is under human protection now. We don't negotiate with threats. We don't compromise with evil. And we never, ever give up. The communication channel went quiet. Dr. Morgan looked out at the human fortress growing in space. At the patrol ships beginning their rounds. At the proof that somewhere in the galaxy, someone was willing to stand guard. They thought we'd send aid, she said to herself, remembering the emergency council session 5 days ago. But Earth hadn't sent aid. Earth had sent deathworlders, and the galaxy would never be the same in the depths of space. Other threats, too. Galactic Peace received the message loud and clear. The humans were no longer content to grow crops and make art. They had become the galaxy's guardians and guardians. everyone was about to learn, were far more dangerous than conquerors.